Hi, everybody. I know it's been a while, and wow, I've had a lot going on. Just to bring everybody up to speed, I had my chemo this week, my cold cap infusion with the Digny cap, and my chemo, and the week before that, I had my port put in. I did do an update on Facebook, but I wanted to talk a little bit today about what has transpired. As I mentioned, I wanted to document my journey. And the last couple of weeks have been more challenging than the previous weeks. I have been had moments of complete breakdowns, a lot of fear. I've really been driven by a lot of fear. There's a lot of things to be afraid of in my seat. When you read some of the stuff that they give you about side effects and what you can expect and what you may not expect, and when to contact a doctor and allergic reactions and putting foreign things in your body. And, the chemo has always been from day one the scariest part for me. But right up there with that chemo was inserting the port. And so I've just been filled with so much fear, and it's been a challenge for me. And everyone says, "Oh, you're the strongest person I know," and I have to tell you, I have not felt very strong lately. And so today, when I went to pull a card before I did this, this was the card I got: Talk to God. And I know this was meant for me, but maybe it's meant for someone else who may be watching this. So I'm just going to do a quick read on what this card meant. And I will tell you, after I read it, I didn't immediately do this. I actually sat down in meditation for about 20 minutes, and it really helped. And I got lots of great messages about my fear and how to manage that. But let's talk about what the card said. Oops, thought I was on the right page there. So the answer is simple. Talk to God. Stop talking to your ego. It only confuses you and makes you fearful. Besides, its advice is terrible and never brings the results it promises. Converse with God instead. Instruct your ego to be quiet and allow your spirit to have a heart-to-heart with your loving Creator. Ask the divine for direction. Listen with your spirit in the very center of your heart, and don't permit your ego to interrupt. God is available at any time, and in fact, He has been waiting to hear from you, the real, authentic, divine, lovable, and lovely spirit you. Tell God what you need and expect guidance and support. Your Creator loves your spirit and wants you to be happy, even though your ego has been telling you otherwise, and your spirit loves your Creator and wants the same. It's only your ego that's causing problems, so stop talking to it and start talking to God. There you'll find the answers. I really needed that. I really needed that today. And I did, in fact, that was the message I got today in my meditation was, where you been? No wonder you're freaking out. You're disconnected from spirit and going through all this madness in your life. And no wonder fear has come into your existence. Sorry. And so the message I got was I just need to pray more, and I need to ask for His help when I'm scared. And then I needed to be more gracious, because I think it's been very difficult for me to be gracious with this over resounding sense of fear. And I have people around me that love me. My mother is here taking time away from her husband and her home and her cat, who's amazing, and really taking care of me, and has just become such a rock for me. Emmett has been a rock. I have such moral support, and obviously this guy over here never leaves my side. When I slept 16 hours the other day after chemotherapy, he did not get out of bed the entire time. He was with me. I think anytime you're having a challenging situation, just ask. I mean, I don't care what you believe in. If you believe in God or universe or spirit or soul or source or whatever your belief system is, call upon it, because it is helpful, and it will help you in those moments of when you maybe don't feel so graceful or you don't feel so grateful. I try to really live in a state of gratitude all the time, and I am so grateful for my support system and my diagnosis and the doctors and the therapies. As much as I am fearful, I am grateful that they're available to me. I mean, what would the alternative universe, and that would not be so great if these weren't available to save my life. And so as I dug into that a little bit, I want to talk about the port, because I got to tell you, the port freaked me the hell out. I can show you the port. So that's my port. And basically, they have a line going up into my vein. I'll show you the picture. This is the picture I was given. Check it out. If that's not scary, I don't know what is. That's pretty scary to me. And I had that done a week before chemo, and they just literally put things in that port. What they found over time was that chemo destroys your veins. Even though I have really great veins, like super easy to access, this is the way to go. And so I can feel it. I can feel it in my vein in my neck. It was very uncomfortable. It seems every time I get poked, I get a hematoma. I don't know if that has something to do with the fact that I'm off the blood thinners for the surgeries, and so my blood clots more thickly because I'm factor 5. And it also clots more easily because you have cancer, so maybe that creates a hematoma. I don't know. Every time anybody sticks anything in me, I get a hematoma anymore. And so I had one in my neck, and it was really painful. I can still feel it a little bit, but it's subsided. So I got that done. It's there. I can't really look at it, can't really touch it. Kind of freaks me out. I have to have this for a year because once I'm done with my chemo, everything will be done through that. All my blood draws are done through that. My chemotherapy is done through that. Radiation, and then Herceptin, which is still an infusion that they put in your veins. I'll have that for a year. So I'll have this for a year. And so, I'm trying to learn to be graceful with it and love it and be grateful for it. And thank God for modern medicine, because I think if I was getting this poked in my arm every single week, it would be pretty miserable. One thing that really freaked me out, and I'm not trying to freak anybody out, but for me, knowledge is power, and knowing things somehow makes them more acceptable to me, knowing what's going to happen with all of this. They take like a big furniture tack. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like a big thing with a big tack like thing on the underside of it, and they literally poke it into your port, and then outside of that are all the tubes that they, the saline and the drugs and everything that they give you. Wasn't prepared for that. It was kind of freaky, but honestly, it was way better than having that thing wrapped around your arm and watching your veins come out, and then having someone go in with a needle and put in that thing in the corner of your arm. I mean, that can be very uncomfortable, and I have bruised from it multiple times. I've passed out from it multiple times. So now it's kind of like not in my vision, and they just kind of go in, and it actually is really better, even though the feeling I have in my jugular. I mean, if you've ever been aware of your jugular, like when you stretch your neck or when you cough, or it's kind of freaky, but worth it. Probably way more information than you needed, but I try to keep it real. I said it wasn't always going to be pretty, and this one, not so much. So the cold cap. So, the chemotherapy that I'm on, I would definitely lose my hair, and I will lose some of it, I'm sure. So the cold cap is this thing I went and got fitted for, and I'll share pictures with you if I can ever figure out how to put pictures up on the screen, like where my lava lamp is, like maybe up there. It's like a pilot's cap, and they fit you for it, and then you go in the next, when you go in to wear it for your chemo, you have to wear it 30 minutes before. It's called the Digny cap, 30 minutes before your chemo and throughout your chemo, and then for an hour, 30 minutes to an hour after your chemo. I'm a really good candidate because I have very fine hair. And so getting my scalp to 3 degrees, and I'm not exaggerating, 3 degrees is what they get your scalp to, helps I guess the chemo, it freezes the cells so the chemo can't get into the cells, so you don't lose all of your hair. It's $400 a pop. And you have to do it every single time you do chemotherapy. And I'm very blessed and grateful to have the opportunity to do this. And hopefully I won't lose all my hair. The hair is not an ego thing. The hair for me is, I don't want people to look at me and know I'm sick, because I don't feel sick. I mean, other than all the poking and the prodding, in my head and in my spirit, I don't feel sick. Obviously my body doesn't feel great. So I'm doing the cold cap thing. It was definitely a pain level of a 10. And I was warned of that. You know, I mean, they're freezing your brain. You're freezing your scalp. It's like, if you can imagine drinking a 2-liter Slurpee, like one of those slushy Slurpee things, and like someone's holding a gun to your head and they say, look, you have to drink this whole thing nonstop. If you can imagine the brain freeze that you would get in that, that's pretty much what it feels like. And it's mostly right here it hurt, but obviously they do it all over. They completely wet your head before they do it. So when you take it off, like you have snow on your scalp, like literally like frost and snow on your head. It's but the pain really only lasts, that 10 pain that I'm talking about really only lasts maybe 20 minutes. And you're wearing the thing for a couple hours at the end of it all. But you know, pain like where you can't talk. Pain like, oh, is that uncomfortable? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. So my nurses recommend taking an anti-anxiety pill and a couple Tylenol an hour before the DigniCap, which I did, which I think made a lot of difference. I think I would have got a pretty instant headache, like migraine headache, had I not done that. So that's going to be standard protocol for me every time I go to chemo. Okay, so back to the God thing. So after I did this meditation today, I thought to myself, you know, what has really been the worst part of the after chemo? The morning I woke up after I went that day, came home, went to sleep. I felt fine the day of. I woke up that next morning. I felt like someone had given me about 8 shots of espresso and an IV. I mean, my heart was racing. It was probably 110 beats a minute, maybe more. I was so hyped up. I honestly felt more like myself than I felt probably since I got the cancer. I felt more like myself, more energetic. I felt like I could run a 5K. I was like, oh, I need to go to the gym. I felt great. Blah, blah, blah. I didn't like the heart racing, and it did make me a little bit nervous, but, and I don't know what that was from. They have to give you steroids sometimes so that you don't have a reaction to the drugs. And so I think it was the steroids that they had given me the day before. I won't be getting those all the time though. We're just doing this in the interim because I am really anti-steroid. So, anyway, about 4 o'clock that afternoon, it hit me. I started to feel like flu-like symptoms. I was not like throwing up or diarrhea or anything like that. Just kind of flushed, had a mild fever, tired as hell. I laid down, I went to sleep. I slept for pretty much 16 hours. I woke up in the middle of the night, had a banana, and went back to bed. But pretty much slept from 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I think, till like 8 or 9 the next morning, with my sweet mother checking on me. And even at one point came in and laid next to me because she was worried if I didn't feel well or got sick, she wouldn't hear me. I'm so grateful and blessed for her. And so that was pretty much it. But then the part that was the most difficult for me and has been the most difficult for me, and I've done tons of research and I can't find anything about it, but my mother did experience very similar things. And some people may call it chemo brain. I'm not going to call it chemo brain because my understanding of chemo brain is you get confused, you can't remember things, phone numbers, the names of items. Maybe you get sidetracked in a conversation. That is not what I've experienced. What I've experienced is, I feel like I'm having an out-of-body experience. I feel like, if anyone's ever seen the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, like I feel like I'm an observer in my own life. Like I'm watching myself film this right now and record this right now, or I'm having a phone conversation with someone, and even though my lips are moving and I know that I'm talking, I don't feel present in it. I feel like I'm back here kind of overseeing everything. It's very uncomfortable. I don't like it at all. It scared the crap out of me the first time it happened. It's almost like someone slips you a drug all of a sudden in the middle of the afternoon. And so a lot of that has been the root of my fear, that feeling of like right before you have an anxiety attack or right before you have a panic attack, this feeling of observer, separate, which has just been really uncomfortable. So in my meditation today, just to bring this all full circle for you, I was asking God, how do I overcome this fear? And it was a fear of the drugs because, that heightened sense of awareness and observer type feeling, the discomfort of it. How do I make that better? Because I have to go back and do this 11 more times. And if it isn't going to get better and that sense is going to completely get heightened and ultimately I'm going to be sleeping more and having this out of body experience kind of, and I'm sorry, I don't know what else to call it. That's the best describer I can find. If this continues to intensify, how am I going to deal with it? Because it's crippled me a couple of times this week and I found myself just in tears. How do I deal with it? And so I decided, there was like this moment where look at what's going in your body. Well, I mean, I've read all of the stacks and stacks and stacks of paperwork, of side effects, of everything that's going in me and what can I expect and when to call the doctor and all this kind of stuff. And I sat and I go through it with a fine-tooth comb and I highlight it because I want to know if something goes wrong. I want to know. I do not want to die from chemotherapy, right? And this is my biggest fear. So I decided to research the drugs, and here's what I found. And it was really comforting. Again, for me, knowledge is power. So I'm on 2 drugs. I'm on one that's called Taxol, and that's my chemotherapy drug. Taxol is a plant alkaloid. It is literally made from the periwinkle plant and the Pacific yew tree bark. Okay, so you can Google Pacific yew tree and you'll see a picture of a beautiful tree and the bark. And the periwinkle plant, many of you have seen them. Some people put them out there yearly, and they have the little flowers with the pinks and the purples and the whites and the reds. Some people put them in hanging baskets, and they bloom and they bloom and they bloom all summer long. Doesn't seem very threatening, does it? When you really look at it like that. The Herceptin is not a chemotherapy drug, but it is a drug that is really the life-saving drug that I'm taking that isn't chemotherapy. And it's an amazing drug. It has an amazing story. There's a whole movie about it called Living Proof, about how the drug was created. Breast cancer being the most common cancer in the world right now. And before Herceptin, most women died when they had HER2 cancer, which is what I have. And this has just really been a miracle drug. It is what's called a monoclonal antibody, not antibody, sorry, a monoclonal antibody. And it's taken from antibodies found in the lymph nodes and your spleen. So, I mean, I don't know that you can get any more natural than that, right? Maybe the periwinkle and the tree bark, but so it's a collection of lymphocytes that are taken from the spleen and the lymph nodes. And they really literally work like a homing device to find the cancer cells in your body. And we have HER2 cells throughout our body. So when you get HER2 breast cancer, we have to really make sure that those HER2 cells are honed in on, and any cancer that resides in those HER2 cells dies. And that is what happens with Herceptin. So periwinkle plant and Pacific yew tree bark. I want to talk about that chemo drug because there's so many, I can't tell you, I've gotten so many emails and messages about, well, drink this or take that, some natural cure out there that, if only the US would, allow these drugs into the country, then everybody could be cured of cancer. Well, Steve Jobs is dead. He had more resources than anyone. And it's not that I'm against homeopathic or alternative cares. I'm juicing, I'm eating organic, I'm doing everything I can that's right. I take supplements. I believe in alternative therapies, but not as a cure, not for a cure for my cancer anyway. There's 100 different kinds of cancers in this world, and every treatment plan is different, and some are more aggressive than others. So don't be naive, and I'm trying to be graceful when I say this. Don't be naive to say, cancer isn't just one thing. It's very, very many many kinds, different protocols, different cures. And the one I'm doing is the best for what I have, the one that gives me the best survival rate, and I don't want to die. So there's that. I mean, I'm going to die eventually, I get it, but I really don't want to die from this early, right? So one thing that many of you know, many of you may not know, is I went to the jungle in Costa Rica a few years back and drank some psychedelic brew, some healing brew that was made from the bark of a tree or plant, actually made from the bark of a plant called ayahuasca. And it is designed to cure PTSD, which is why I went, and designed to really help you heal emotionally, internally. And it's a very euphoric feeling. It's a creepy feeling, I'm not going to lie. And, but very healing, and honestly, the best thing I ever did for myself. The best thing I ever did for myself, for sure. It has healed a lot. But now I can kind of associate, because it was similar to the feeling that I have on this chemotherapy, in that my body literally feels the same, like kind of a little tight, and I don't know how to explain it. I'm looking for words. That separateness outside of yourself, and viewing your world as the observer. That's also a very common practice in spirituality and deep meditations. And so now that I'm kind of seeing this Taxol, it comes from a bark and a plant, and I did this ayahuasca that comes from bark and a plant. I think that's going to remove a lot of my fear about it, and I'm trying just to live in it and be present in it and be grateful that we have these things at our disposal, and that God was kind enough to make sure that I had access to them. And I have to work on being graceful to those people who are throwing alternative treatments at me, telling me I should never do chemotherapy. Because it's easy to say when you don't have it, or when someone you love doesn't have it, and when their life depends on it. So that's it. I'm just going to be present in my out-of-body observerness, and I'll share the pictures of the cold cap and the periwinkle maybe. Have a great day. I love you guys.